No. All right, folks, it's that magic hour. I see we have three, so we have a quorum. We may have another member joining us any moment. As far as the agenda package, we had one alteration or one change last minute. We'll get into that later. First order of business will be approving the minutes from the last meeting, which is in our packet. And I did not see any problems with it. Okay,
It's approved.
got a motion to approve.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Go ahead and vote. I'll support it.
Aye.
So with the minutes from the last meeting, which were October 8th, we will put into the file. Okay, the first order of business looks like 723 Bay Street. This is about an air conditioner, piece of air conditioner equipment. Go ahead, staff, and talk to us.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, members of the board. The first item is an approval request after installation of two HVAC units at 723 Bay Street and the corner of Scott Street. The location, as you can see on the aerial map, is X'd out. Here it's right smack downtown Beaufort. The store in the building is Carolina Me Crazy, I believe. It's like a clothing store on the first floor there. You can see on this picture is an aerial picture from 22, or actually 19, what the building actually looks like today as well. The zoning is T5 downtown core, so T5 DC. It's the densest zoning district we have in Beaufort for downtown properties. The HVAC units that we're talking of today are, you can see them here. They were installed around September 26th. Unfortunately, the way it went down is the contractor that was requested to install these units had actually received a project permit from staff without involvement of historic planning staff. So that was missed, since this is, of course, within the Beaufort Historic District. Permitting staff had issued a project permit for the installation of these HVAC units without myself and the HTRC knowing of it, so it did not go to an HTRC meeting. After complaints from nearby citizens, as well as our executive director of the Historic Beaufort Foundation, Ms. Lee Sunderla, we were made aware of the installation, and staff tried to put a stop work order in place. By the time we went out there, our code enforcement official, they had already finalized their work. So after talking to the applicant, the contractor, which is Epperson Heating, AC, and Plumbing, we made clear that, of course, without proper, Historic District Review Board approval, such mechanical equipment cannot be just installed, especially not without any screening in place, especially not on this very visible, prominent location on the side of a contributing structure in a very prominent location. So after that, they put in an application to come to your meeting today. Also, what they had done is, obviously they went around downtown Beaufort, took some pictures of similar HVAC units that already are in place and have been installed without, kind of similar to what we're talking about today. So on this slide and within your packet are pictures of HVAC units, heating, cooling units on the side of buildings of, for instance, 802 Bay Street, which is actually across the subject property, which is the Captain Francis Saltus House, where the Hearthstone Pizza place is in. We've got a HVAC unit as you can see on the side of 301 Carteret Street, where City Java News is. That's part of the City Lofts hotel building. Also not screened. You can actually, it's visible from the street level there. Another pictures that the applicant has provided us with our HVAC units on the sides of the Beth Israel Synagogue on 403 Scott Street, as well as 713 Craven, which is the Arsenal, okay? So for any projects, basically, that occur within the historic district, our development code, as well as the Beaufort Preservation Manual, has so-called integrity guidelines, rationales by which staff, as well as you, as the review board, go by. So the 7 integrity guidelines that we have is our location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. So we always go by these 7 in order to make our recommendation for you. In addition to those, with all other projects, rehabilitation, but also any addition or construction projects, we also look at the Secretary of the Interior standards, because the Beaufort Historic District is a national landmark district, so it's protected by the Secretary of the Interior. So therefore, we have 10 standards that apply here as well. So looking at the HVAC units that have been installed, starting with the location, we determined, no, it does not comply with this integrity guideline, especially if looking at Chapter 15 of the Preservation Manual for Beaufort, when we talk about energy conservation, any equipment, mechanical, electrical, communication systems equipment, including HVAC units, it says such equipment is to be hidden or screened from the view. So they're in undisguised presence in the district is inappropriate. Number 2, design doesn't check out either. Also within Chapter 15, it says, despite being necessary, such mechanical equipment detracts seriously from the character and charm of the historic district, as the visual and historic integrity of the district could be much enhanced through more sympathetic placement and selection. So setting is a problem. It's very obvious. Any mechanical equipment that is installed, of course, it's necessary within this kind of climate that we're in, but it shall not be located as such to be visible from the street. Looking at the screening requirements here, and that's obviously missing, right? Looking at the materials integrity guideline doesn't check out either, because if there was screening, it wouldn't be appropriate, right? So it would, if there was screening, it needed to be also provided to blend in with the overall structure. Okay, so it doesn't check out in either cases. There is no screening. If there would be screening, of course, it would have to blend in. Workmanship, I mean, there's nothing there. If the HVAC units would remain, there would be, it would have to be kind of integrated as it wouldn't be made obtrusive, or, it would have to blend in some form or fashion, right? Also, Secretary of the Interior standards, number 1, 2, and 3. Check out here, number 1, property shall be used for its historic purpose to be placed in a new use that requires minimal change, the defining characteristics of the building and at its site and environment. So it kind of, the HVAC units definitely destroy the characteristics of the building and the environs. The historic character of the property is not retained, it's not preserved. The physical record of the property and its time, place, and use has been obscured and abused by this as well. Number 9 and 10, any new additions, exterior alterations such as installation of mechanical equipment or related shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. That goes against that as well. And number 10, new additions adjacent or related to new construction shall be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in future, the essential form integrity of the historic property and its environment would be unimpaired. Okay, so with that being said, staff recommendation for this request would be to deny the request of leaving the HVAC units installed at its current location at the side of the building. As I just read out, overwhelmingly goes against the integrity guidelines as well as the standards of the interior. Our recommendation would be to have the HVAC units installed in a more undisturbing location, like in the roof or the rear of the building, where it would not be negatively visible or impact, or would have a negative impact on the building. So, of course, it would. So if screening would be an option, it would have to be screened if like on top of the roof, so that it would kind of blend in with the character, with the district, that it wouldn't stand out, and using materials that kind of go in line with the materials of the building and so forth. So that's staff recommendation. Do you have any questions?
None for staff, and we may bring you back up with more questions. So just for the audience, the next step will be we bring the applicant up to make comments, and then we'll open the floor to public comment. So,
all right.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Good.
Scott Lee, the owner of the building. And
I'm Kent Feldman with Epperson Service Experts.
And so we started a project where we actually had an old AC unit that's going down. It's been there 25 years. You can't get the parts, you can't get the pieces. There's just no way to deal with it. And so multiple AC units guys came out and they all said, you're going to have to go with mini splits, 2 of them, 1 in the back, 1 in the front. This is a solution for the building. And the 1 in the back is in the back, out of the way, can't be seen, kind of checks all the boxes, everything's good. But then we had to deal with the front of the building. Okay, we had to put a unit up there. And last thing I wanted was that on the side of my building also. So let me say that before we start this, okay? And so my question, we went into looking at the roof. The problem with the roof is a metal roof, okay? So you go put this thing on a metal roof with the vibrations, there's residents, people live full time upstairs. And there's no soundproof and everything else. So you put it up there, plus you got a safety, they got to do maintenance on it every 6 months. And there's no access to the roof within the building whatsoever. So you got to put a 30, 40-foot ladder or with a man lift in order to get up there every time you go do maintenance on the unit. So the roof kind of from a safety standpoint, from a utilization and mechanical consistency with the people living upstairs, no, that wasn't an option. So then we went to the backside of the building like we put for the other unit. But Duffy's, where Duffy's at, that building literally goes all the way up right side of the building. There's maybe about a 3-inch gap between the two. And you can't install anything there. We couldn't attach it there. So it came down to, this was the only spot, okay? And I personally kind of expected to have a little bit of kickback off of it, okay? But then he came and said, look, here's all the other units downtown, exact same unit, right across the street from you on Hearth. There's the exact same unit on the side of it. You know, all the pictures that you see here, he showed me, this is how they were installed everywhere else. So my comment was, go get approval from the city. If they're fine with it, then I'm fine with it. No, then we'll kind of go from there. So permits were done, everything was submitted. The only kind of comment back from the city at the time was, make sure it doesn't drip water onto the sidewalks from a safety standpoint and a hazard, which then they tied the drains into. There just happened to be an underground drain right there where this unit was. And that's the reason why the unit was put there to connect into the underground unit. Permits were approved. We've received everything that we needed to do. We went and installed your comment to me is I'm going to install it to the same standard that all these other units are around town on all these other buildings. That's the path we took.
Yep.
He installed it. All of a sudden, after the fact, we get informed, sorry, there's a whole process y'all didn't go through that we weren't informed of. It's installed. We went through before we even went there, we went through alternative potential places, the thought process, because that was my first thought process too. this was the place that we had to install it. Now, I don't have a problem. We build something around it, okay, that kind of tries to match the building, out of wood, but it's got to have something where the airflow can work and they can open it up and get to it to do maintenance. I don't have any issues with that whatsoever. But to be told, go move this unit, at this point in time, I think it's a little ridiculous. Especially when we got all the approvals and everything else ahead of time for what we were told to do.
Okay. Anything to add, sir?
Yeah, no, just kind of like what he was saying, prior to it, I was very nervous about putting something downtown Bay Street, but when you're standing at that corner and you look straight across at Hearth, not only do they have one, there's only one, by the way, that's just one AC unit. There's not two of them, just the one that's mounted there. But there's two, one on Hearth, which is a AC condenser, another one that's for a walk-in cooler that sits about 6 feet off the ground. You could even come up and grab the high electric voltage. Nobody says anything about it, but when we called to get the permit, we talked multiple times with them. They said, no problem, just make sure the water drains into that drain, which you can see I put the drain down by the gutter. The day of install, even the permit people came by, didn't say anything, but then assuming somebody downtown walked by, saw it, didn't like it, and then turned it in after the fact. So I felt like we followed everything we could, and we did, and I didn't think there was gonna be any issues because of the fact that everyone else has the same unit sitting downtown with no screening. Why all of a sudden is it getting picked out for us?
All right. Well, thank you for your comments. We may ask somebody to come back up once we get into some discussion, but first we'll open the floor to public comment. And then Mr. O'Kelly's here. He's an adjacent property owner. Would you like to speak, sir?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members, my name is George O'Kelly. I own most of the property to the east of this, going towards Carteret Street, if you're not familiar with where east is. There is already a mega HVAC unit on my side. In fact, some of that HVAC unit is on my property via easement. When Dick Stewart owned the building, when Mr. Paul Swartz owned it, he and I had a handshake as far as putting the unit on some of my land. It kind of, if you looked at that map they had up earlier, it showed that the property line doesn't go straight, it angles. And where it angles, about half of that HVAC in the back, yeah, there it is. Trying to spot where it is, where it angles over, the HVAC unit, like I say, we did an easement agreement when Dick Stewart bought the property, and that was fine. They have to access my gate to get in there to service it, which is also fine. But thinking ahead, if this board or the city disapproves what's there on the Scott Street side, and I think I couldn't hear everything that this gentleman said, but I think he said that they couldn't put it in the back or maybe on the roof. And all I'm thinking is if they're considering putting it on my side, then they would have to get on my property to do that. And nobody's approached me about that because they haven't had this situation come up. But I'm not going to go quietly into that dark night because I've had lots of trouble with people accessing when they shouldn't, and I keep the gate locked and I let people in when they need to get in. But it's been a mess, and I don't know if I'm thinking too far ahead. But if they can't go on the side and that's visible, then might want to go on the side that's not, and that brings another issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Kelly. Anyone else in the public? Ms. Sunderland from HBF.
Lisa Sunderla, Historic Beaufort Foundation. It's unfortunate the way that this happened, and feel for the situation that Scott is in. And the easy solution obviously would be to approve it, slap some hands, and not let it happen again. But is that the right thing to do? And, with regard to the other units that are visible throughout the downtown area, many of them were done many years ago. Others may have been done and not done correctly, but that doesn't mean that it's appropriate to continue to do it incorrectly. This is a tough one. This is absolutely a tough one. And, there are guidelines and codes in place. And from that perspective, our preservation committee felt very strongly we need to fall in line with the codes and with the preservation manual guidelines. And hopefully in this particular situation, they can find a solution between Mr. O'Kelly and Mr. Lee to be able to make this work if there's not another location. But that's a very prominent, visible side of the building. You had your poster there when you were running for mayor. I mean, that's an opportune place for people visually look straight at that when they were coming down Bay Street. So I would hate for this board to set a precedent because I don't think that those other units that were put there, that this board would approve that today. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sunderland. Anyone else in the public wish to comment on this topic? Do we have anyone online that needs to opine?
No, sir.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and close public comment. We're going to bring it up to the board and we may ask some members of the audience to come back up if we have some clarification. So what are y'all thinking? I mean, you see the rabbit hole we have going on here, right? I do have some questions I would like to ask the applicant in a moment, but I want to make sure y'all had a chance to.
Well, I mean, the question I was gonna ask was the alternative location, but I think the gentleman said that's not possible. Right? May I?
Go ahead, yes, please.
So to the applicant, you're installing replacement units or you have AC and heating in the building now, correct?
Yeah, the unit that he originally had that unit that he mentioned that was, I guess, handshake done, that had to be probably 25 years ago now at this point in time, is failing. And we cannot get, additional Freon and everything else in order to do it, the parts and pieces. So that unit is dying and we don't know when it's going to go out. So
So that's the unit you're replacing.
correct,
or
correct. So,
Replace.
yeah, so we had to install these units knowing that that's going to die.
No,
And
but if I may, knowing that this gentleman would not allow you to extend use of it, no?
I have not been asked, sir.
but when
I have not been asked, and if he's got a unit that's dying and wanted to replace it, he certainly can come to me and
Absolutely.
get it together.
And that's what I was trying to get to. It sounded like maybe just didn't have
The-
communication link there.
the units there, you can't get that anymore and you can't replace kind of in kind with what it is, okay? So that's why we had to go with the mini split situation. In
Or
order,
could those two units be relocated to the other side of the building and mounted the same way?
and then that's where his building is right up against the building. You can't put it, you can put one on the back side. That's not on his property, but it's on our property on the back of the building, okay? Which is the intent that when this fails, we're going to put one back there. And then this one has to be towards the front because you had to have it in front of the building, different parts of the building in order to cool it down effectively. And because the way the building next door is constructed, you can't put it over there, okay? And that's why we had to go where we had to go.
I have some follow-up question. I was going to have a similar line of questioning. So up until this unit was, or decision was made to install this unit, you had air conditioning, but you're stating that those systems are starting to fail from
Correct.
age and
Correct.
replacement. Were all the units prior to this in the same location, the compressor, outdoor compressors on Mr. O'Kelly's edge of his
Correct.
property?
Correct.
And you went to mini split. Did you do two mini split systems? I see two air handler or,
That's just one, but we're going, when this fails, we put this in knowing this is going to fail, but not knowing when it's going to fail, okay? So that when it does fail, then we're going to put another mini split in at the back, for the back side of the store that can fit on the back of the building because his building doesn't go that far back there. So it can fit out of the way, not seen on the back of the building for that side.
on the east side of the property?
Correct, correct.
And his property goes all the way back to the Blackstone's wall. Where's your property stop before then?
No, the building doesn't go that far back. The building only goes
It's still his-
halfway.
Yeah, but it's still Mr. O'Kelly's property.
Yes, but we're talking about
I'll
attaching to the
help you
building.
on Some of it too, right, the little building in between his and mine is owned by Al Hefner.
Correct.
And, he's got some
Oh,
property behind
okay.
his.
Okay.
And it goes back and touches the old Buford Hardware property, and then mine joins, they all join together back there, kind of where that little angle is. And,
That's where the
I-
confusion,
this
okay.
gentleman has never talked to me, so
Okay.
I didn't know.
Yeah, you haven't had the
So
conversation.
I thought he had Duffy's building, okay, which obviously,
What?
Duffy, the Duffy building, which is,
No, no,
okay.
I have
So
715.
it's that, not his building is up against us, it's the
It's,
Duffy
it's the
building.
Duffy, Mr. Hefner's building, correct.
Hefner's building is one that's up against us that we can't put it on that side.
Yep.
Because that literally, and it goes halfway down our entire building.
Correct.
And then we have space to put a unit on the backside to cover the backside of the store on the side of our building that can't be seen
Well,
on that side.
I'm familiar. I built Blackstone's restaurant and I put the ladder, staircase and air conditioning in Blackstone's, and that's what Mr. Fordham, was talking about, Mr. O'Kelly was talking about, the agreements that he made with the prior, owner of Blackstone, or the owner of Blackstone.
So we're talking.
get an
different
easement.
Units, then we're talking something completely
Two
different.
different animals. Now, so
Okay,
what
alright.
my line of questioning though was trying to get a handle on, like typically an air conditioner dies, you replace it in kind with a split system. You went to mini splits. The mini splits caused the problem. If you'd stuck with a split system, was it possible if you did that, you'd put the compressor where it is now, the old one, and not have a problem?
There's not room because it's such a big unit that's in there, so.
It's
'cause
there
it's
now,
still-
right?
Because it's still running, okay, I would literally have to take that out, put a whole new one in order to go down that path. And this all went down when it was hot during the summertime when it started failing, but it was still running enough.
Okay, well, so the decision logic is that you have a dying unit, you put a supplemental unit in, and you're still keeping the old one, and you cause this problem inadvertently, you know,
Correct.
not pointing fingers, I'm
Correct.
saying that's just how it unfolds.
Yep.
The reality though is if you replace that outdoor unit with a new unit, we wouldn't even have this conversation. Because you'd put a new, you know, like a 3-ton or 4-ton, wherever unit you have there, I don't know what size it is, in the current place with the one that you say is dying, and you wouldn't need many splits. It sounds like to me, you may be upgrading the amount of air in your space.
It is.
Because,
So we're increasing the capacity because the store doesn't stay cool all the time.
okay,
So the way to increase capacity is go to two mini splits in order to solve the problem.
I understand. So it's a change in dynamics of the space
Yeah.
is kind of brought this on.
Yeah.
So there's more fundamental, I get the whole story. I mean, I understand the logic and the problems related. And we have to a minute get into the details about the merits of the protection overlay and how this board, what our jobs are up here, for example. And so I have some comments on that, but I think I'm up to date with you on everything you did with the.
Yeah, I was thinking he had the other one was having that AC. I thought it was the other building.
Yeah, it's a very problematic issue downtown on zero lot lines, anytime you do mechanical, and you're exactly right about the roof. It's a low pitch metal roof that's actually an old historic 10-year metal roof that's actually at the end of its lifespan. And if you put an AC out there, you're gonna rattle the people living upstairs. In fact, they're not happy about you putting it on the side of the building either. But
it's.
but they own the building just like you do, right?
Right.
Just so the audience knows, this building is a threeplex, is owned by 3 different individuals in an association. There's a retail store on downstairs and there's 2 apartments up. So anytime you do something, you can't just do it by yourself. You need to negotiate with your partners, right?
Yep.
Did you negotiate with your partners?
I
to
would
do
let
this?
them know that we had to put it in and we didn't go to the roof. And because I knew the roof would cause them problems.
Well, I understand it. You didn't even once reached out to the owners that live above you to tell them you were doing that.
Well, my daughter was communicating, so I thought she did.
Okay, so there's other fundamental problems if you share a building with somebody and you go do these type operations, then you find yourself up here in a public venue trying to decide what we're gonna do, and you put the onus on us to unfold this thing. It's kind of not fair to us, but at the same time, there's a bigger question than this. And I haven't made up my mind what I'm thinking yet, but I'm looking at the problems we have citywide in the type of codes that were written years ago that protect the overlay of the historic landmark district. One is the shielding of equipment has always been a bone of contention because not every lot's the same and you can't shield them same. Just like you did, I can walk around and find many applications where the system was not followed. And I'm just not certain blaming you for it at this point. Hindsight is a proper method either. But I'm also thinking we've got a broken system when it comes to how we look at the dynamics of these little pieces of the code, like shield your equipment. Well, in the Millard guidelines, it talks about shielding equipment, but it doesn't say you can't use landscaping. So some homeowners can put a bush in front of their AC and they meet the code. Others say you got, the building dictates the need of shielding. You've already mentioned you could shield your equipment, and maybe that's where we have a discussion a little bit with the board, decide that's the direction. But you can't put landscaping to shield it, right?
Right.
And you don't have property the other side, and the roof's probably not a good location. All these things are negatives, but should we block you from being able to do AC in your building? No, that's not our job. You know, mechanical systems have to be able to work. Saltus building was not pre-historic district. That building, everything about those AC units is happened under the same watch, the same code, okay? The Arsenal building, the church building, all under the same code. You've got great examples of things done wrong that no one's blew the whistle at, right? And what do we do as a community, not just as board, you know, not just the members of order? What do we do as a community when we have some practical issues that need to be dealt with? And this is one of them. You know, what if you didn't have an option to except put it on the side of the building? What do you think the answer would have been from a board? If, in other words, you come and say you don't have an option, but had you asked permission, what do you think we would have answered back? Or is there-
Hopefully, yes, because I gotta have air conditioning, you know?
I think we couldn't say no, that's one, but I think we could say, how do we shield it? And we'd get into that conversation. I think we would have, as a board, gotten into that conversation. Now, Mr. Woods is an architect.
Right. And I personally don't have a
Steiner?
problem with that whatsoever. You know, when we started this process, I expected some approval to say, you gotta put a wooden thing that matches the structure of the side of the building around it. That's what I kind of expected to come out of it. But then, you know, him doing his job said, no, look, here's all the other units installed downtown. This is how the standard that they do it. They put a metal frame, blah, blah, blah. This is what it looks like. As an owner, like, okay, I see this everywhere else. You're right. Go get approvals from the city. He came back with approvals from the city. From my perspective, that was the standard. Okay?
Well, the permitting process continues to have problems in these type of incidents. I mean, it's always a constant thing, like the mechanical world, your mechanical contractor. I mean, one of the things about the code is interesting is you can change an air conditioner unit out and not get a permit. Now, were you required to? Yes, but they don't do it because there's no real city function to go out and say, well, wait a minute. We didn't see you get a permit for Mrs. Smith's house changing out the air conditioning unit or putting a new one on it. So it's about the police keeping and the desire of our community to have that type of state, right? Do I want somebody to come knock on my door every time I do something in my house, ask me if I have a permit? No, hell no, I don't want that to happen. But at the same time, you messed up by not understanding that you have a building in the National Landmark District. That's just the first step wrong. But you did the right thing by at least your contractor went down and got a permit, and the staff, they don't know every answer. There's no way you can. There's too many levels. So I know that the young lady who issued the permit did what she's probably done 100 times with people coming in saying, hey, I want to put an air conditioner. Okay. Paperwork done, no big deal. No one ever questions it. This case is a little bit different. So I'd like to hear from the board thought. You've heard all mine.
Well, I'm not sure we can put blame on the owner as just because he has a building in historic district. He should know this. Maybe he should, maybe he shouldn't, but he went through what he thought was the proper channels by going to the city. Never a flag was raised apparently until after the fact. So I mean, the reality is it's there, but I don't know if it's fair to say he's the one at fault. I don't want to get in but to the staff, has there been any discussion or potential opportunity to screen the unit as being now discussed? Did you ask him to look at screen opportunities, or was that not even an option in your mind and you say, no, it's in violation, it has to be removed?
We didn't discuss that because let me just go to that slide again. If you look at where it sits, it's basically a zero lot line right there. So it's such a prominent location. I mean, you could try to maybe install some sort of, screening or like some structure that would maybe screen it, but it would still look so odd and out of place that it would still be, I would say it probably would still not check off all the boxes when it comes to the historic guidelines or integrity guidelines for such, right?
And I would not disagree.
Of course, it would be a major improvement to what is there now, but since there's not really a lot of space to work with here, like for instance, what Mr. Sutton had mentioned with the vegetation or something, sometimes if you have a little more leeway to work around with, if you've got a side yard or something like that, maybe you could do it. in this instance, I don't really think you could because it would still look very odd and, yeah.
Okay. May I ask Lisa a question?
Sure.
Lisa, from the HBF, was there anything in your mind or your thought process that would say if it was screened, it could be acceptable?
Well, I think hearing more from what Mr. Lee has said today, I was back there kind of Googling some different views of screening. I have seen screening in other communities that is elevated high, above. And, so I think there is the possibility, but one thing I want to really emphasize is if we're working with Mr. Lee on this particular situation, that doesn't mean that that's going to work on every single building and every single opportunity. So I don't want, the public to think, oh, okay, yeah, we'll just do that. That's the easiest thing. That still the best thing is to be unobtrusive and not visible. But in this particular situation, because it doesn't look like, unless Mr. O'Kelly and Mr. Lee can come to a solution, it doesn't look like there is a solution. I think we would be happy to work with him on proper screening.
Well,
for
that seems to
site.
be the logical pathway. At least test it to
Yeah.
see if there's a good solution before we ask this man or force this guy to remove the equipment that had been approved.
Yeah.
I don't believe that we ever should establish any precedent up here. I think if you do something
Mhm.
as an exception, it should not create a precedent. Even the ones we saw as good as examples should not be in a precedent to say, okay, well,
I agree.
they did it, so somehow it got away. We shouldn't do that. No one should do that. So, but from a practical standpoint, he got a permit, it was installed, and only after the fact was it obvious that it shouldn't have, been placed there. So what do we do? I would like to suggest that we do just that. We see if there's any potential screening opportunities that would be complementary to the building, that would somehow work within this context, not necessarily for anywhere else in the downtown area, historic district. And if you can't get to that point, what are the alternatives? At least we've given this, played this out instead of just saying yes or no without any further consideration. So that's.
Hear what Kim has to say about this.
No, I mean, I certainly am no HVAC expert, but my first thought was why not just replace the dying unit? Because that's what the rest of us do if it's starting to go. Obviously, there's a lot involved with the people that own the different properties. And I understand that he went through all the proper channels, but something happened along the way. But again, I feel like, yeah, what kind of a precedent are we setting? If we say, okay, let's go with this and let's see if we can screen it so that it doesn't look obvious and, and what if it doesn't work? Then what? Then we're back to square one.
The screening thing's tough. I mean, it's not one kind fits all, for sure. But I think, it's part of where we are and what we do. We're in one of the hot regions that needs air conditioning, right? It is what it is. It's like building a parking garage and making it look like something else. Why would you do that? All you can do is drive the cost up and make it ridiculous. It ought to be something in a parking garage, it ought to look like a parking garage. The AC is gonna look like an AC, but I don't think screening is gonna tell you it's something different. We know it's a piece of mechanical equipment hiding behind there.
I'm looking at it right now, it's standing up.
I thought about that. I thought about how much, yeah, that would help, but
And that goes towards screening. I mean, anything you do, make it less conspicuous.
yeah, camouflage it, right? Paint stripes on it. Make it look like a siding, clap siding. I mean, it is what it is though. It's mechanical equipment. And that's why Saltus has theirs. I agree. I don't like the idea of a precedence being set, but I don't know that that could ever be the case. I mean, every building's a little bit different. I think the code needs to be updated, which I know staff don't want to hear that because it's been a constant change continually. But this one thing about screening has been a problem from day one. Every project. If you go down and look at a couple of buildings downtown, they moved their equipment to the rooftop. Well, it's on the roof. Well, you can't see it, right? No problem. But if you go out on a boat and look up, you see all this extra 3 feet of mechanical equipment, all in the skyline across Beaufort. And you're like, well, who approved that? Nobody. That was done by the mechanical contractor for necessity, for a reason. This was done for a reason, for necessity. I don't think we can change history in this case and make it where we don't have ACs we see.
Well, if, I would ask that, the applicant, he seemed to be in favor of at least considering that option. And before we discount that and move on, I think if we ought to take up on potentially that offer.
I
It's-
agree, that's
yeah,
the
but-
direction that's the
Any
direction this
opportunity.
board seems to be talking.
But another question, it's obviously above floodplain. Do you have it above, excessively above flood? And I know you have to be able to clear, people walking.
There's above where you might walk and hit it and everything else.
Right, well, but it seems to be, I mean, even walking under it and flood, it's probably 2 or 3 feet or more higher than I'd assume minimum flood. Does it need to be that high? Is it less conspicuous? I don't know.
Yeah, I think you lose sight of it. As soon as you see it once, it goes away. Pedestrians typically don't even notice, especially tourists. They're not even looking for that stuff. The only people look at us are those of us who are in the preservation mindset and trying to protect the district. But I think screening is the right answer today. Just talking, I think that's the right direction to go. I only want to know the mechanism. In other words, do they come back to a board? Is this something that can be done at a different level? Is this something that we would be okay with staff dealing with?
Piece of equipment that would be with a lesser profile, let's just say? And there's nothing that could have been secured maybe under the awning on that brick wall, where actually that could be camouflaged a lot easier
Yeah,
in here.
The problem is the pedestrian right away walking under that.
You can hit it.
Yeah, well, you're gonna see it, but also it may get too low. I don't know.
And if you go more towards where the Carolina Crazy, awning is, you start seeing it coming from down the street more, if you get that. I'm just mentioning screening cause it's like, no, maybe it's something that, everybody really talk, I don't know what the heck we would do, okay? Then I know painting it white would, on the surface, make it visually just blend in. As you're walking down, it's not gonna stand out. And I know you can't paint everything white, but maybe the metal framework and stuff like that, maybe we can kind of paint white. But then if you do start then building the frame that comes out, comes around it and makes an entire block around it and try to cover it with the wood, real wood, then are you sticking out more?
Well,
No, no.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't think we need to try to solve that design problem here
We won't
in this,
design
in
here.
this, it's, it's gonna take a little more thought than that. But I would,
Yeah, I was gonna suggest if you're amenable to it, that, we have a staff architect and, we have this HTRC, we could maybe assist him with the design of with your air conditioning and. with
I would ask that they
alternatives,
take
and
the
then bring
next
it back here in maybe 60 days or something, because it's.
2 weeks or
Christmas.
whatever, and go through the exercise and certainly engage the HBF. And see where you go with it. We may be back here in a month and.
Yeah,
let's
I
go make
agree.
it
That's,
issue.
that's probably the right approach is let it be flushed out a little bit more. And if it needs to come back to HDRB, then it does.
And hopefully without establishing a precedent, hopefully this wouldn't fall through the cracks, but if you had a situation, we may have a viable then solution, say this is a path where they could take if they have to do something where they have to mount it, and then it has to be camouflaged or screened, so. That would be my suggestion, and I think
All right.
or if you need a motion, I'd certainly,
Well, we're almost ready for a motion, I think. If
May not-
we get an idea
may
from
not
you,
get a
what do you think?
second,
I agree. I think I'm not prepared to approve this the way that it is right now, but I think in all fairness, we should take a look at what could we potentially do to make it,
soften a little bit, yeah.
so I would say.
So the motion would be a table in this case, and they bring it back to us.
Yeah, I guess that would be appropriate, instead of putting a specific motion, and they know what the
Yeah,
should be.
you can table it or. Yeah.
If we deny it, then it's about the equipment placement. It's not about the screening. So if we table it, we're not discussing any further. And if it needs to come back on the table, you just need to let us know once you get through your steps of, we tried this, it didn't work. We're gonna recommend the HRB put it back on the table and then,
You're okay with that?
Yeah,
We'll,
yeah.
we'll
You got
set
an
something up with
architect
them.
That can design something, I'm gonna put it on, whatever. they-
We can
they come up
explore it if that's.
right, so I think we know what the motion is.
Motion to table.
Second, sorry.
All right, we have a motion to table in a second. That means you get to kick this can down the road a little bit further and I vote for yes.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Hope we can work all this out. Thank you, Mr. O'Kelly, coming in.
Thank you.
All right, well, that's one off the books. We got three more to go, I think. We're gonna go down to 1203 Prince Street. And this is new construction, two-story duplex with a garage and ADU.
All right. Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board, Nick Navia, Planner One, City of Beaufort. So I'll be presenting 1203 Prince Street. It is a new construction, two-story duplex with a garage plus ADU as well. So just going through some of the preliminary slides real quick. This first one is just an overview. Small little cyan dot there is the location. I'll zoom in a bit more. You can see it there a bit closer. And then right there, so it's in the northwest corner of Prince Street and Church Street. So I guess before we get into the actual design, I'd like to just go over a bit of the history of the lot and what was on there before. So the site's currently vacant. There was a contributing structure that was demolished in a COA granting approval for demolition was issued in 2017. However, the actual demolishment didn't occur until the beginning of 2022. And so with that being said, there were also two additional prior HRB applications for the demolition of the original contributing structure. The first one in 2009 and the second one in 2012. However, at least in our records, there wasn't any additional documentation regarding what was detailed in those requests. So this project is requesting approval, conceptual approval for the duplex. The applicant has been to 3 HTRC meetings for this project, so we've gone with him. Kind of the design has changed a bit to be more in line and to be ready for an approval here at the board today. Originally, we were going to be going for final approval. However, after kind of receiving comments and going through the process, we decided that conceptual approval is more appropriate at this time. Just to go through some more slides, here's a current picture of the lot. No building present on there. So this is, you're facing north from Prince Street. It's the northwest corner. And then just facing west from Church Street. So here's the Beaufort County Historic Site Survey that was done on the original contributing structure. And here's just a bit of closer image of what the structure actually used to look like. So it was a 2-story structure there before. On screen is the original demolition application with the 2017 COA granting approval for demolition of the structure. We're going into the actual site plan for the new construction duplex. As you can see, it's facing towards Prince Street, the front elevation. The garage ADU in the rear would be accessed off of Church Street. Here's a picture of what that south elevation, the front facade would look like. It's relatively similar in style to the original contributing structure, which was something that was discussed during the HTRC meetings. Here's the north elevation or the rear facade. This is what you would see if you were directly behind the structure. You got the garage ADU, which is smaller in size and massing than the main house. Here's the west elevation. Then here's a 3D rendering of approximately what the project would look like. And so getting into the integrity guidelines and rationales, this project, we believe, meets all of them. I'll just run through them real quick. So the location, it's in the Bluff neighborhood. The proposal does not negatively impact the historical context within the area. The primary structure is oriented towards Prince Street, which is what it derives its address from. The design is also in compliance. We've been through multiple HTRC meetings for this project, and we feel that the design, barring the recommendations we'll have at the end, is good to go. The setting as well, the relationship between the house and the historic setting, there's no negative impact with the proposal. The materials, which is one of our recommendations for the applicant to provide a full material cut sheet list. But from the materials currently presented and part of the plans, they're all acceptable for new construction in the historic district. The workmanship is also, won't be negatively impacted with this proposal. And then the feeling overall, we do feel that the feeling of the surrounding structures and how this one would complement them, it wouldn't be negatively impacted. So our staff recommendation is conceptual approval with the following findings and recommendations as a requirement for final approval at a later date. So I'll just run through them real quick. There's quite a bit, but they're all mostly relatively minor things. So for the first one is just for the applicant to demonstrate compliance with setback requirements, which is section 241. It appears on the site plan that the rear of the ADU encroaches into the 5-foot rear setback. So if that's the case, to just kind of clarify that, adjust that so that it's not encroaching there. The applicant to provide a south elevation for the ADU. The plans show both of them for the south elevation. I mean, you can partially see the ADU back there, but it'd be ideal to have a south elevation of just the ADU so you could see it in its entirety. Same thing with the north elevation, to provide a north elevation of just the main house that's not obstructed by the ADU. The other recommendation is to label and provide detailed drawings of the door details, window details, railing details, gable vent details, the eave rake details, and the typical wall sections at the house and garage. These pretty typical things to include in a plan set. We're generally supportive of the proposed design, but there's just some minor graphical errors in areas that require clarification. The porch foundation piers appear not to be properly aligned with the columns above. The window head trim appears incomplete and extends beyond the jamb casing. The beam and frieze board in the porch gable appear incomplete. There is no delineation between the second floor porch decking and skirt board. Currently, it reads as a thick slab. There is a blank space behind the asphalt shingle awning above the garage door that does not extend to the corner board on one side. Applicant to clarify if this is a skirt board and to correct this detail. The closed gable detail on the east and west facade lacks details. The north facades for both the ADU and the main house lack window casings. And then staff recommends making the first floor windows taller to be compliant with one of the code sections in 463. The applicant has made this change to the primary facades, first floor windows, but not to any other facade. Just for that to be consistent. Given the overall width of the west and east side elevation, staff recommends the applicant to consider adding more windows to these elevations to improve the solid void relationship. The gable on the front of the house appears blank and needs more detail. Recommends that the upper porch have a more substantial beam with drip cap that transitions to either lap or shiplap siding. Frieze boards should be considered under the soffit to help provide detail and shadow lines in this area. And similar comments can be applied to the closed gable side elevations regarding frieze board and siding. The applicant to note that all cementitious siding has a smooth finish. Applicant to show a location for a service yard. Showing that it will be hidden or screened from view. You have the option of lattice, open brick enclosures, or vegetation. And then finally, applicant to provide cut sheets for the windows, exterior doors, garage doors, exterior lighting / fans, columns, railings, if they're not wood, paint colors for all the exterior. And then to just also, to note the selections, to circle them on each cut sheet. So all those recommendations are all architectural comments, just kind of minor things. Overall, in the grand scheme, I think the overall design layout of this project fits pretty well. Originally, when this came to us, I believe the proposal was to have the house face Church Street. So that was one of the comments we had made through the HTRC, is to have it face towards Prince Street. We think the ADU in the rear, the garage / ADU with the access from Church Street is appropriate. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I guess one other comment would be to maybe more clearly define the parking spaces on the site plan, but because as they are required to have 5 parking spaces, 2 for each unit of the duplex and then 1 for the ADU. But with the garage and then with that large gravel kind of parking pad / driveway, they do meet the 5 spots. So that's all I have.
Thank you for the presentation.
Yes, sir.
All right, at this point, we'll bring the applicant up to talk to us about the project.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Board. My name is Lobby. Well, this house, y'all can see, is gonna look beautiful when it gets all said and done. But we had great experience with the staff and all the comments and suggestions. So really, there's nothing to go against them, in other words, except the only thing, I had a brief conversation with my architect. He said that we're not sure if we're going to be able to add more windows on the side of the house because of the inside layout. But that's the only thing. Everything else are just simple details with the architect and building codes and getting all that ready for the next meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you for your comments, sir. And we'll open up the floor to public comment and see what we hear. Well, Lisa stood up quicker. I'm sorry. We'll let her.
I'll go back and sit down.
No, come on, Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Sunderland, Historic Beaufort Foundation. I'm used to me being the only one commenting
Yes.
sometimes. So want to thank Lobby for the evolution of the property and how he's changed it over the last couple of months, because I think it is a much better solution than what had originally been presented. Couple of things that our Preservation Committee did want us to bring up. Recognizing that it is a corner lot, we always have some allowance in our code and guidelines for a more prominent structure on a corner lot. And, this absolutely kind of fits that bill. But it's still important that those buildings on those corner lots are sympathetic to the structures that are surrounding them. And throughout those neighborhoods and along the main street, the two crossing streets, everything is 1 or 1.5 story is what you see throughout that neighborhood. I'm not against, and the Preservation Committee is not against the 2-story property, but if there's any way to kind of minimize it, and he's already done some with the sloping on the pitch of the roof, and we appreciate that. I don't know if there's any more that can be done with that property to minimize the scale of it. So that was one thought. The other thing, as a potential solution for the gable, to do away with the closed gable, the boxed gable, and do a short return. We think that would be more effective on that structure. If you look at the historic photos from 1960, and I'm sure over time things were modified, they were some unusual returns on the gable, which were kind of interesting, but, oh, cool. Yeah, so you can see it was kind of a very odd treatment on both sides, and I had another photograph that showed it from the other side as well. So just an interesting enclosed gable return that was done. It was larger than normal, but I think overall it was a good solution. I did have another question about parking, but Nick has answered those questions. So I think from the standpoint of our preservation committee, Beaufort's lost an important building due to demolition by neglect at that location. And, you know, I wish that would have been something that we as HBF had been able to tackle, you know, in the past and take on that project as one of the properties, you know, that we would be able to work with to save. So I think it's important that whatever happens at this location, this project, or another, be contributing to what's going on within that district and respectful of what's been there in the past. And I think Lobby has definitely made steps in that direction. So want to thank him for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sunderland. Yes, ma'am. Come up and give us your name and tell us what you think.
Hello, I'm Martha Spears. I live at 1201 King Street. As you look at the front of this house, which is going to be on Prince, right across the street is Hattie Ficklin's house, which is now going to be a short-term rental. And then there's my house. And then beside my house, we have the Victoria townhouses. And I think there's 3 short-term rentals there. My question is, upon completion, and I realize that nothing can be done until a CO is established, will this house have any of those 3 be a short-term rental, any of those 3 spaces? Is that a yes? Is that the plan?
You don't have to answer, but if
No.
you want to let us know, great.
Okay,
Yeah.
so in my history, I was a residential contractor for quite a few years, along with being a university professor. You don't usually build a house without a plan of what it's going to be for.
Ms. Spears,
So,
speak to the board. Really, you're.
sorry,
addressing
I'm
us.
sorry. I know there's been a short-term rental issue. If you look behind that house on the next street, which is Duke, there's 3 or 4 right there. There's another one across King, across from the townhouses. I'm concerned about this becoming another short-term rental. I feel there's most likely a plan for this when it was designed. I'm also concerned about the parking. So if there is if there's been a suggestion for short-term rental that there's 2 parking spaces for every bedroom, that's obviously can't work on this. There is no street parking there. There's no available space, and it's at a crossroads where there's a stop sign. So that's an issue I have, along with whether this is going to be a short-term rental. And by the way, just an aside, this is not in the Bluff, it's in the Northwest Quadrant.
Thank you, Ms. Spears, for your comments. Unfortunately, we don't dictate policy on short-term rentals, but we feel your concern. I think that's on a lot of people's minds. Okay, any other public comment? Would anybody on the internet like to talk to us?
No, sir.
Nobody wants to talk to us, okay. Well, we'll bring it up to the board for discussion, so we'll discuss it up here. Now remember, this is conceptual approval. So typically in conceptual approval, the most important pieces are the scale of the building and the massing. What goes inside doesn't really, is not our preview to the most degree, but there are comments that we've heard about windows, for example, and the reply back was about interior design, but it is conceptual.
Okay, I have one comment, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
sir.
And I would agree with Lisa's assessment of the closed gable. I think that should be removed and reconsidered as far as a different return. On the,
Like a pork chop return?
yeah, this, instead of the closed gable, just have a return. This, I think it will help the scale of the building by removing that.
Okay, this is just, we're just discussing conceptual concepts here.
Well, but it was brought up and that was one of my notes. I think other than that, I think that the staff's report or response is spot on. I think they just need to adhere to that and move on to the next level.
Yeah, well, it went through obviously several meetings, HTRC. I mean, we all have our personal taste. And mine thinks that a full long porch would have been what would have been on the previous house that's been long gone. And that would have made a shed roof porch, made this house look a lot and feel a lot better, in my opinion, but, I'm not gonna design it for them. So I think that extra gable, I guess my point, is extra gable is creating a sense of height from the street level. Had it been a shed roof double porch,
Right.
you know, it would
I
feel
agree with that.
softer.
Scale that down.
Yeah, it'd feel much softer, but one of my concerns is topography on this particular lot. It's been a while since I've been by there, but I don't see anything in the site plan that talks about that. There is an elevation on one sheet about being 19 feet above sea level. But as I recall, there's a house that's behind this, the neighboring house behind it is much, much lower than this house. And the land drops off dramatically. For the old rear porch that was on the old house, it's gone. You see it in that picture right there, right?
Don't have a mark.
You see the problem, I just don't know how you do that without some intention of retaining wall, some separation of the properties, adding an ADU back there with the water drainage issues. All you're gonna do is flood the neighbor's house, neighbor's yard. I have concerns about that. It may not be an architectural component, but it is a practical component of building on the corner lot like this, different than what was there before. The house before was not a slab on grade. It was actually a piered structure. This appears to be a concrete slab on grade house. And then we get into the next steps, I'll be focusing closely on the fenestration and what those materials are. It says stucco, but you know, as we've talked before, oyster shell stucco is not an answer. So we need definition. Staff will flush those things out when it comes to us for the next level, if they haven't already discussed it in TRC. So my biggest concern would be making sure that the site prep works and does not contribute to the stormwater issues of the neighbors, which is a constant battle in Beaufort. And then the window, I want to talk about the windows a little bit. The massing of the structure. The massing, that blank wall does bother me a little bit. It starts to look more like an apartment building and not a residential house. It looks like something we'd see in a big box neighborhood. And I get the reasoning, and most architects, and Mr. Woods, you're an architect, but correct me if I'm wrong. If the kitchen's on the first floor and you've got a window that matches the living room window, that window would be behind cabinetry, correct? So if that's intentional, that's something you might want to look at. Does staff look at that? The only window on the right side is actually a full-size window and it's going to be behind your cabinets. That's not a problem. We do it in historic houses all the time. Just making sure that that's the direction, because if you'd have shown a little skinny short window up there, I think it would have drawn more attention to itself. But at the end of the day, when you come back, if you shorten the window up, we're going to catch that and notice it and ask the question then. Pardon me?
Not to mention there's a stove in front of the window.
Yeah, not to mention that there's a stove in front of the window. Yes, exactly. So there's a couple problems with that layout already before you even get to saying that you can't move the windows because of the architectural design. There's already a problem. Okay. So that needs to be, before the next step, that needs to be finalized and looked at closer, because I think you can add, if you move this range, you can add windows in that space, even if they're blanked off by cabinetry. And you could actually put one to the right of it to create a 1-2 window pattern. It'll make that east elevation feel more residential, more like the historic house that came down. The historic house scale was correct. I mean, I don't think it's that much bigger than the original house that was there. It looked like it's 30 feet wide. I think the original house may have been 28 feet. I had been in that house many years ago before it was torn down, and it's a big structure. So there's no argument for me that a 2-story house is appropriate for that corner. So that's not a problem. I think my mind is really how you can do a little bit better job with the porch, the returns on the gables, and some window placement, and be thinking about those things when you come to final. But I don't have a conceptual problem with this.
And again, I would apply all the comments that the staff recommends. I would have moved to adopt those.
Okay. Anything you want to add to them?
Well,
It's
the
conceptual.
the removal of that return on the gable and your comments, I think are spot on as well, which I think are supported by the staff's comments.
All right, so we're poised for a motion about
Later on,
approval with
later.
conceptual. Can't even talk. All right. So what do y'all want to do?
We have a new member on the board today.
Welcome.
I apologize. I got caught up in signage.
Understand. All right. Well, we're at that moment.
Hmm?
Did you hear enough of it to make a comment?
No, I did not. I studied it during the
What would you like to
weekend.
make? It's a conceptual.
Exactly, and I didn't have any problems based on it being conceptual and based on a prior 2-story house being there, so.
So the things we're asking him to go back is to look at, which is, he's already agreed to do, look at the staff comments.
Yep.
Before he comes back. We want to add to that is to restudy the windows and study the gable returns, right?
Yep.
And then make sure you meet all the requirements to build, a slab on grade structure. Because you're high enough, you don't need flood venting. You don't necessarily have to do it on piers. And I say this often in the meeting, we used to articulate that you had to make it appear to be on piers, even though it wasn't. And I'm not sure where we're going with that. This is at 19 foot above sea level, and it only shows a 1'10" elevation above grade. That's at the front, at the street side. But at the back, if I'm not mistaken, you're gonna have double that height. So your fenestration is gonna look different between the garage and the main house. I think you're gonna have, the drop down, and the last thing I want you to do or see you do is bring in fill to try to raise your lot, because I'm worried really about your neighbor, right? And I think that's the big concern, because when you go in and put gutters on the house and all that roof line, where are you putting the water? Right now it's going right to your neighbor's yard, and that's not gonna be a comfortable conversation we're gonna have in the future. So I think we entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to, everything we just said. I'll be like Eric now.
Staff get all that?
I would, well, I'll be a little more
Study the
specific.
pier, and you want to study piers instead of concrete slab, is that what
I'm sorry,
you wanted to study piers instead of the concrete slab, is that what you're
I think you're asking.
no, I'm not asking to
Also
change it. because
stormwater.
We allow that to happen. I think the question really is how you look at topography and how the house really sits compared to what it does on a CAD drawing, and then say, how do I mitigate that look? And if pier structures are better, that's great. But on 1'10", you're not gonna put a pier structure unless you raise the building.
Yeah, I know we discussed this at the HTRC, but maybe that could be, I think, to Grady's point, he was trying to make a motion, but I think that should be added. Just study that as part of the recommendation, right, of your motion, so.
Well, I don't know.
Three
That's-
things,
that's gonna
right?
change.
Windows.
I think that's something we should look for to the, should that be a requirement?
I
That,
think the board's got to decide are we going back to the days when we've told builders they cannot build a house without being articulated as a pier structure?
right,
Now, what does staff have? Y'all have any comment on that? Because that's Milner guidelines never talked. In fact, they did reject slab on grade construction, and the houses started creeping into the neighborhood that actually did that.
I think the preference would be the pier, yeah, that would be a preference.
Yeah.
well,
We're not as,
peers or implied peers.
yeah,
That's the debate, because the implied piers slipped in because the owners really wanted to do slab on grade. There's a cost factor there. When we make them go to tiered structure, there's probably in the foundation work a 20% increase, if not more. And then there's other later problems, like you gotta insulate the crawl space. You gotta have access to it. You have to put your mechanical down there. All these things are problematic. So when you work on it, you have to get under the house. That's where the critters like to go. So you're like, wow, we really gonna make people do that? So if you can make a slab on grade house appear to fit the fabric of Beaufort, then that's the answer.
Right, and I've served on it's not historic, but another review board in a very traditional community, and we required that. We required implied piers, and you do it in the forming. And it's like, you know, a module or a spacing that would emulate a pier system. I think that's the appropriate approach.
See, the problem with this house though is
Yeah,
it would make them raise it to do that, because you don't really get much out of a 1'10" raised house. You know what I'm saying?
well, I think you could, there are cases, take the same house and you have it where it's in a 9 foot elevation, so you got to go up 3 or 4 feet. You would certainly want to see the piers at that point. So it could be a distance above grade. If you're more than 30 inches, you're going to have to do applied piers or a pier system.
Yeah.
I don't know if we should try to get into making people do, crawl space because of cost.
No, I don't.
Things.
That's not what was my direction. My direction was more about, are we gonna stick with the formula of,
I don't think this is one we should start on because it is so close to the ground, it appears.
Yeah.
Unless the actual grade is different than what they're illustrating here in their drawings. But I think it's a bigger conversation because you're gonna see more and more and more of this, and it's just gonna get very almost suburban, I think, and.
yeah, it's, that box does not look right sitting slab on grade, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know at the planning workshop, we were actually contemplating at least a 2 foot high requirement for all single family, not just for
Yeah.
the historic district, but for all single family in general. So,
And we've kind of perfected a detail on the implied piers, so it's very easy to do.
Yeah, that's the right direction. I think they need to come up more to make it
Right.
work though, in this case.
Right.
The back of the house, no, I think that topography does lend itself. I think it's the front of the house that makes it so low to the grade that you get you get this much.
Well, One that ought to be represented correctly, if there's a grade change on the site, the elevations ought to show that profile. So you understand that you got a 1.5 on the front and maybe 3 in the back. So I think the next set of drawings need to be better, to better represent the finished grading. Because it's to the chairman's comments about drainage, if we're not addressing it during the approval process, well, it's gonna be like this HVAC unit, it's gonna happen after the fact. And then we're stuck with how do we fix it? We don't want to do that. Want to make sure that any grading and drainage is addressed and the house, the finished grade needs to be shown on the site plan and on the elevation, so you know what finished floor is, and you know what the finished grade is around the house.
Yeah.
And the elevations again should depict that. So clearly it's.
got a few additional recommendations, right? Those are good ones. So let's just, I think you had the full return. You wanted to remove that. So I think you just,
No,
someone has to state them all. I think, there was the windows placement was also an issue. You're talking about, this whole foundation issue, how you want to state that. I think just look at it, and then the stormwater and drainage on it. Did that cover everybody? So I think someone just has to make
Yeah,
that
but I have a
motion.
question.
And then you also wanted to show an elevation that showed the elevation changes.
I don't mind the 2-story, the scale of that, but I'm not loving the scale of that porch coming out. Like that seems really big to me. And I was just curious if they had ever discussed something that was just not so grand, something that was a little more simple in line with more of what we see historically, something lower. Was that ever discussed?
I don't believe it was, unless,
See, that's a piece that this board can opine on. We can reject the architectural design to some degree. It's the fenestration of the building, does it fit, does it meet the intent? In this case, it probably is okay like it is. It's just that's my contention is that gable sticks out there and makes that building feel so much taller than it needs to feel. And if it was a shed roof porch across there with double porch, you'd actually get a bigger porch and a lower feel. And it fit more in what the old house had originally.
I mean, that could be a recommendation that you study
Hey.
the porch, because I think you both have brought it up. So if you want to make a recommendation for final, that they
I'm gonna put it here.
study
Study.
the porch.
All right, somebody's got to make a motion since my vice chair's not here. Mr. Motion.
That's a lot to do here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to get this all put together, and since Eric's not here to make it for us. First, my motion is to adopt or agree with staff's recommendations as written in our summary. In addition, remove the closed gable and restudy the gable returns. Restudy the window placements, particularly on the public realm side, I think, which is to the chairman's point. At the next, I would assume it's required for the next review, they would have better graphics and represent, again, the site conditions, grading, finished floor elevations, et cetera, so we understand what those foundation exposures are. And then if the staff deems appropriate, once we get that, then they would need to review just the monolithic slab versus implied piers. And if we feel like implied piers are needed, then I would recommend that we would then agree with that at the next submittal. And there was one other, and the front and the porch, to restudy the scale of the gable porch, to see if there's a better solution that's more appropriate for the scale of this particular home and the context of the neighborhood.
You nailed them all.
Yeah.
So he got a motion. If staff could have captured that, it'd be a recording, then we can get a second. We'll move on. We have a second. We have a second over here, folks.
Like after all that motion.
All that. All right, I'm gonna call the question.
Aye.
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 Okay.
Thank you.
So we give you more work to do, unfortunately, but that's the way the system works. I hope you bring it back to us. We think it's a good project. I've been watching that site for a long time. I'd love to see a house go there. Okay, let's see where we can catch back up where we were, or
All right, moving right along, another infill project, 1705 Duke Street. This request is for an infill development of a two-story new single-family residence with a guest house in the rear. The location, you can kind of decipher, I hope, on this map. It is part of the northwest quadrant. The zoning is T4HN, so T4 Historic Neighborhood District. Looking at the pictures of the neighborhood, the surroundings here, you can see there is a new built residence on the west side. So on the left-hand side, there's another empty lot on the east side, on the right-hand side of the proposed lot. And at the end of the block there at the corner, this shows a construction, but it's a finished single-family dwelling unit. If we look around, if you go down Duke Street towards Bladen, you see a lot of new residential development that has occurred in the last couple of years. The specific lot here is not really surrounded by a lot of contributing historic homes. So besides vacant lots, new built lots, that's basically the character of the neighborhood, is a lot of new residential development there. The applicant is Jeremiah Smith. He's the architect for the property owner. So the house that we see here, and we asked him at the HTRC meeting, which he came to on October 29th, to kind of provide us with a streetscape to kind of see how the proposed new house that is framed here would kind of fit into that section of the block here. You can see it from the front elevation. That's the proposed front elevation. Looking at the house, it kind of falls in line with our specific design, architectural design features that we historically see in the northwest quadrant. Okay, so you have a front street, first floor, porch facing the street. You have a gabled roof. It's 2-story. You have 3 bays on the first floor, very symmetrical, a kind of also the raised, so as we kind of discussed at the last application that we were just discussing, it is raised up, so it's a raised first floor here. Although it sits in an X flood zone, so flooding is not an issue. The lot elevation is actually between 21, 23 feet. Our base flood elevation in Beaufort is 13. As you can see, it has a so-called widow's walk on the roof. It has a chimney, it has a screened-in porch on the side, on the west, or actually on the east side, on the right-hand elevation. Looking at the site plan, you have a better picture in your packets, but you can see here, it's a fairly deep lot. The house sits in the middle. The driveway is on the right-hand side, so on the eastern side of the property. It goes all the way back. It is proposed to be a gravel driveway. And in the very back is a small guest house that is also part of this request. So the heated square footage of the primary building is a little over 1,800 square feet. The heated square footage of this guest house is 285 square feet. The main house contains 3 bedrooms, 1 on the first floor, 2 on the second, 3 bathrooms as well. So that's basically the context of the proposal here. Going down the presentation, you have a side elevation of the house. So looking at the front, you have the front porch, a chimney. So the fireplace is the living room, obviously. You have the side screen porch, as you can see here. So we had discussed shutters. So it is, when he came to us, to the HTRC committee meeting, he also had, or the architect also has submitted revised conceptual plans showing options for, or so with or without the shutters in the front section of the primary. So basically what we discussed at the HTRC, at the last HTRC, when it came to our attention, is the street section, which I showed you. We wanted to see that. The slope of the roof, it was, when he presented it to the HTRC, it was a 12/12. We asked him to kind of slightly smoothen that slope. So now, as you can see here, is a 10/12. So the revised plans that I'm presenting to you for approval today has that 10/12 roof slope in it as well. Staff is not supportive of the widow's walk as a disguised dormer. It is not a typical feature in Beaufort. So that is basically one of the main issues where we would not support. Any other of the facets here that have been presented have actually been slightly revised. So in the plans that he has presented to us at the HTRC, on the side elevation, there was on the first floor, if you look at the sides porch there, it's more symmetrical. In his first plans, one of the windows was hidden behind one of the posts, the columns there. So it's now nicely symmetrical in line. So he has done that revision. Looking at the front door, the first plans that came to us had an oddly wide front door, which was around 4 feet. He has kind of scaled back that front door to more I think it's 3 foot. I assume he can clarify that to you. So it's a scale back front door. It's more in keeping of what you would usually see also traditionally in the Northwest Quadrant, but also in the Beaufort Historic District as overall. The lot coverage is being met. it is a fairly big lot, as well as the driveway will be gravel, so that impervious lot coverage in this district would be 65%. He's definitely just doing the calculations of the lot size, which is fair, like 6,500, a little bit more of 6,500 square feet. With the footprint of both the primary and the guest house, he's somewhere around 30%. So he's way below what he's allowed to do. There are some trees, if you look at the site plan, that will be removed or are planned to be removed with this construction here. The only specimen tree that we, as the city of Beaufort, consider a specimen would be a live oak tree, a 23-inch caliber live oak tree that would have to go. With our latest revisions in Chapter 5 that talks about tree mitigation preservation, though, residential lots of record are exempt from any mitigation, though. So we ask the architect, the applicant, to kind of give us alternatives in trying to work around these kind of specimen trees in making, showing us alternatives in maybe trying to preserve any specimen or landmark trees. But since these trees are right smack in the middle of the lot, it just is not feasible. You can also see here, we asked him also to provide some renderings, some conceptual drawings of what the guest house would look like. You can see that on the right-hand side of the slide here. It also contains a carport on one side and a small storage shed on the other. It's basically a big guest room with a bathroom and a small kitchenette area inside. So that's part of the proposal. There is, besides this one carport, most of the parking will be on the driveway. It's a rather long driveway, as you saw on the site plan, and goes all the way back almost to the rear of the property. So there is there's a turnaround to kind of reverse and back up your cars, and then there's enough storage, or there's enough room for parking vehicles on site. So with that, we come to our integrity guidelines that we look at in section 4.72 for new build infill development as per development code, but these are also covered within the preservation manual. Explicitly also that we use the design manual, the guidelines for the Northwest Quadrant, which are part of the preservation manual for Beaufort. So if we look at items 1 through 7, the location, it checks out the design for the Northwest Quadrant. It incorporates a lot of architectural facets that we historically see on houses that represent the Northwest Quadrant. It has the gabled roof. It has a street-facing front porch alignment. It kind of also reflects the density that we see around along Duke Street, especially going towards Bladen Street. So it is in keeping with the immediate neighborhood. The design, as I said, it definitely is representative. The setting it's a good setting for this kind of infill project. We see 2-story houses along Duke Street in the immediate neighborhood. The materials, as well as the workmanship, are also in keeping. It's if you look at the siding, it's clapboard, horizontal clapboard siding. The shutters are an option if they are to be put on the house, especially in the front, like the first floor facing the street, but also the main windows on the first third section of the primary. The architect, the applicant, understands that these need to be operable. That was presented to them at the HTRC. They are well aware of that. So our recommendation is conceptual approval today with these recommendations that they show us again that the coverage, lot coverage is met, that setbacks are met. We would not recommend the Widow's Walk feature on the roof. That's one item that we would recommend they go back and revise that and kind of get rid of. They stated a fence to be installed. We would like to see a fence design to be submitted in future at one point to label all the materials and plans on the plans, and also provide us please with the cut sheets, of course, of the specifics for doors, windows, exterior lighting, paint colors, et cetera, which have not been fully disclosed as of today, okay? So with that being said, are there any questions from the board?
I don't have any. I don't think the board has any at this point, but of course, we retain the right to call you back.
All right, thank you.
So we're gonna bring up the applicant now, Mr. Smith and his team as necessary, and tell us what they're trying to do.
Mr. Chairman and the board, I'm Jeremiah Smith with Allison Ramsey Architects. Thank you for your time on this, and thank you to staff, Christopher. I want to let you know, we have just decided to remove the shutters. There's not a great way to cover those front 3 windows, so we're just going to keep it simple and remove those. If it's all right, Mr. Chairman, I'll just get right into it. And then I think the only other thing really is the Widow's Walk. I look forward to hearing what your thoughts on it. I would hope that the board would support creativity and new things as long as they fit. Just because something hasn't been done before doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. We can just look at, if it's a good design or not. I do have a photo of a Widow's Walk in the Point that I'd like to share with you.
Love to see it.
Yeah.
It's 100 Lawrence. Of course, this is a grand home. I bet a lot of people don't even notice it because it's pushed back. I think that, the Widow's Walk we are proposing is not a major element. It will not be super visible, but we do think it will look good when you do see it. But again, it's behind the main mass of the 2-story structure, so I think it will be fairly secondary. And we're open to hearing your thoughts on it. I think particularly the owner would like to go back to the 12-12 pitch, just a little bit steeper, just so that the building doesn't look squatty, looks a little bit, more vertical. And that would also kind of hide more of the Widow's Walk.
All right, Mr. Smith, thank you.
Thank you.
We may call you back up. You might want to sit in the front row, though. All right, we're going to close the applicant comment period, open the public comment period. Anyone besides HBF with a comment? No, well, we'll let Miss Lisa Sunderland come up.
Calm down.
Hello. Lisa Sunderland, Stuart Beaufort Foundation. I was actually just gonna thank Jeremiah for working to minimize the overall height of the building by reducing that slope. But what I did point out to him, which was kind of ironic, is that when they reduced that slope, it emphasized the Widow's Walk more when that slope was reduced. The overall scale of architecture that we're starting to see for new infill construction in the district seems to be getting larger and larger. And I realize that it's extended families, but I also realize in some cases it's trying to create duplexes and affordable housing opportunities throughout the district. So I think this is something that we as a city and our organizations working with the HRB and staff need to kind of look at as we're moving forward, looking at the evolution of the historic district and what's happening. In this particular case, I think there are some successful elements that Jeremiah has put in that have helped to minimize the scale of it. If you take a look at this, this is the west elevation that's currently up. This is the elevation in my mind that doesn't really work and appears much more massive. And if you change it, if you could do this for me, Christopher, if you change it to the east elevation, right? Is the other one. This one's much more successful because it breaks up the building mass throughout. And you've got the windows, you've got the porch that's added in there. You've got the break with the front of the house to the back of the house. So I think it very successfully helps to minimize the overall scale of the building. If you look back then at the other one, here we go. Yeah, I did it by myself. If you look back at the other one there, if there could be something successful that also breaks that up some, if the board decides not to support the Widow's Walk, this might be an opportunity to change the roof line or to do something a little bit different that helps to break up the mass of that side of the building. With regard to any other the Widow Walk particularly, even though it's not something that's typical within our district and really the Northwest Quadrant, our preservation committee spent quite a long time discussing it and trying to look at alternatives for being able to minimize its visibility and seeing if this was something that could work on this piece of property. They went back and forth do we move it to the back of the building? Can it be done this way or that way? But in the end, they kind of came back with the fact that it just is right now so visible and stands out so much that it really wasn't appropriate for that site and that structure. They also agree with what Jeremiah said about no shutters. So that, and then I wanted to point out that they have successfully done the piers in the way we were talking about on the previous building. So that's something as a really good example for us. And then the last item, and I just talked to him about it, he did lower the chimney. That was one point I had noted at HTRC that the chimney seemed overly high, but he has lowered it down. But again, it all depends on the ratio of what's happening with the slope of the roof and how all that works together. So thank you. I think overall we support conceptual, but see that there are some areas for tweaking and more minimization of the scale of the structure, and then did not support the idea of the Widow Walk. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sundela.
Mhm.
Any other public comment? Hearing none, assuming there's none on internet at this
Right.
point?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll close the public comment period and bring it up to the board to discuss. This is a conceptual approval. There is staff recommendations for change. And we've heard from the public. What do we think about this?
I would like to say that I like the scale of the building. I like that it's a little less cottagey than the rest of what's going on in that specific area. I don't mind that it's taller. I'm not so sure how I feel about the Widow's Peak. But I'm just gonna say that for right now.
Okay, save it, let us beat it up. Son.
This is to Jeremiah, if I may. Jeremiah, you mentioned that you would prefer to go back to a 12-12 pitch as opposed to, I think this is 10-12. The scale as drawn seems to be pretty complementary. Are you not a concern if you go to a steeper pitch, everything has to go up, the Widow's Walk, the chimneys, all that has to go proportionally, and to me, I defer, you're a very credible architect and good designer. It just seemed like that may be pushing it a little bit to go to a 12-12 pitch.
We actually had 12-12 before, and I think the Widow's Walk stayed where it was. And it's pretty slight, so it's not a real big difference. I can share it with you if you like. I think I've got it.
It's 12-12, maybe 10-12, not a precedent pitch, but it's 12-12 and an atypical slope for roofs in this. It seemed like that's much deeper than most of the homes that you would see. Is that a fair statement or no?
I mean,
It's creeped in, 1212 has creeped in the new construction in the last
Right.
10 years, so.
I'm not an architect, so I cannot picture what a 12-12 looks like. I have a 10-12 in front of me, and that looks fine. Is that,
Is that something you definitely want to
Got
do,
that.
Jeremiah, or is that just something you're considering or would like to do?
It's actually in your packets. You can see a comparison between
Okay.
the slopes before and after, the 12/12 versus the 10/12. So
There you go.
I didn't include it in here. I'm sorry, but yeah.
oh, yeah.
Well, while y'all talking about roof pitch, I just, a comment, why isn't there not a full height elevation, illustration on the drawings? I mean, you can scale this, but most architects will provide us with a maximum height so we can talk about height. In this case, I've got to decipher quite a few things to figure that out, and you're talking about lowering pitch, but none of that helps me.
You want an overall height?
Generally, the peak height is what we usually look at as a determining factor in addition to the codes, but it's missing in your drawings. Do you know what the height is?
I don't. I know we're under the maximum, but, no.
Well, there is no maximum. There's a maximum based on the board opinion, and you're the chair from the past, you know that. I mean, before I talk about height, I want to kind of know where you think you're gonna be, but. And then we can have discussion, like example, you've got over 3 feet of crawl space. Is that a particular reason you did that?
We're still talking about the height we want. I think it's about 42 inches now. We may end up going a little bit lower if we do a raised slab. As it's drawn, I think it's about 33 feet to the peak.
Okay, what's your crawl space height?
30 inches,
Okay,
36.
all right. Only reason I asked, and we just had one about slab on grade, and we talk about pier orientation and stuff like that, and I'm like, okay, great. Now we got one that's higher than code requires, and we're talking about elevation height issues, and we're talking about trying to bring the roof down. And it's like, wait a minute, what are we missing here? Why, you're the architect, tell me why you want to come up 33 to 42 inches on a crawl space. It doesn't help you add any equipment. Are you putting something under there that you need to put under there that height?
No equipment. What I've heard is, enough room to get under there and just physically be under there. Otherwise, you can't get in there. And really, it was just the request from the owner that she just wanted a little bit of height.
Okay,
Is it because on the Widow's Walk you can see better? Is that what she's trying to accomplish?
great question, but I don't know where it's going.
I don't know. I don't think so, but
Okay, so I guess every time we try to mitigate height, we have these kind of discussions, like what can you do? And I hate saying change your roof pitch, and when we don't discuss, topography, the flood elevation, the foundation height, 18 inches is a minimum code requirement. Yeah, I hate climbing under an 18-inch house, right, to do service work. But 33 is like way more than you need for a new construction. And you talk about going slab on grade. Well, you wouldn't need 33 slab on grade. You'd be doing monolithic slab way up in the air. And then you got all this extra stucco space. It still makes the building tall, but it doesn't help you with elevation
right, or the cost.
or the cost. So if you told me, oh, we're going to go slab on grade, we're going to drop it down to 18 to 24, articulate piers, put some false, maybe some faux hog fencing in or nothing, or just stucco shadow line. All right, that's an option. This is conceptual. That's what we're going to beat it up some. And then the height, it'd be nice to understand what you're reaching to, because I can scale it. You got 10-foot rooms on both floors and you got 8-foot door on the front door. Now, I get it. 6'8" is the standard door height, but everybody that's moving here now from other parts of the country want 8-foot doors and 10 to 12-foot ceilings and all these things, and they all go right back to our fight we have about elevations and heights. And it's nothing in scale with any building in the neighborhood when you do that. So tell me a building in the neighborhood historic context that meets this type of elevations.
Yeah, I mean, all the ceilings were 8 foot, the porches were 7 foot.
I know that's not right or wrong. I'm just saying in context, when we're trying to put a house in a historic district within some existing character, everybody, every applicant, every client that comes to us wants to go up and big and 10-foot ceilings and all this extra stuff. And now a widow's walk. I'm not supporting a widow's walk in this case. So, you know, that's not the first time your firm has come to us asking for widow walks on projects. And I think you've been told no every time. And here we are, you can try it again. Okay, there ought to be some context to understand that you can say no to a client and say, no, that's just not going to fly in a historic district typically. But I love your plan of trying. If you don't try, you don't get it, right? But it is conceptual. You didn't come here asking for final. So 10 or 12 or 12 or 12, that does impact. But that gives you an attic, a huge attic space. But that's all. I mean, I guess they need storage.
Well, the plate height of the second floor is not 10, it's 8, and then it slopes up to a 10-foot ceiling. So it's not a huge attic.
Well, that's not what your drawing shows. Your drawing shows 10 foot.
No, that's to the ceiling,
That's the ceiling height, right?
but the plate height is down lower.
You got vaulted ceilings in that top story? Okay. See, that pushes the building up just because somebody wants vaulted ceilings on a second floor.
Well, I would argue that's actually pulling the roof down if your plate is only at 8 foot, but you get a little extra space inside that you can't tell from the outside.
Well, you get it by increasing the attic height, which increases your roof pitch.
Well, we would do that roof pitch anyway, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that's, I think what you're saying is inverse. He's got the plate height down. That's gonna determine the scale of the.
That's the outer edge though, but when you go in a room, you just get vaulted ceilings.
Can't see that from outside. Chairman, we don't have purview inside the buildings.
Okay.
If you change this, you change the pitch, that's obviously gonna affect the ridge height, but.
Well, if you got a high ceiling in there and try to put staircase to a widow's walk, that definitely affects the pitch.
Yeah, well, I think there are different issues here. The what is what may be standalone, but I disagree with you.
Okay.
If, as an architect, if I've come before this board 100 times and I try 100 times to get a widow's walk, that's my prerogative and my client's prerogative. It is not the board's prerogative to tell you, predetermine what you can and can't ask for. And I think that was a wrong statement. And I hope next time that you come back, if you ask for another widow's walk,
Yeah.
that's what your client wants, you're doing service for your client. And I would respect that every time. And I think that's wrong. That you sort of slapped his wrist over that. That's not right. And.
Well, I stick with my comment.
Well, I hope so, because I don't think that was very fair. You have a credible architect. He's come before this board. He did serve as chairman. I think they've got very good reputation in the historic district. I don't want to question everything these folks are doing because they're good architects. If Jeremiah, if they want to set this at 36 inches, I think that's reasonable. I think it's in proportion to the total scale of the building. The building we saw before, I would take more issue because it did not have a foundation. It looked more like a monolithic slab on grade.
Well, that's what we want that one to come up.
I know. And now we're saying we want this one to come down.
I'm not asking him to come down. I'm asking him why he's having it so I can understand.
I
And the
understand,
total
but,
height, the total height question comes to mind.
and I agree with that, but I think in overall proportionality, I think that this foundation height is not excessive. In my estimation, that's, we can agree or disagree on that, but that's just my assessment. What I would question on the proposed, widow's walk is almost to Lisa's, concern of that side elevation. It just does not seem to be well thought out, if for lack of a better term, excuse my, crassness, but it does not relate to what's happening on the second floor or the first floor. There's no, there's real no facade theme in my estimation, Jeremiah. So if that's something that you want and the board says, okay, do it, then I would suggest strongly that you go back and at least try to organize that upper facade so that it has relationship to something below, because right now it just seemed like it's quite random.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was probably to Lisa's comments about that facade, that particular facade, because I would agree that the other side is it's very logical, very organized, proportions are good. So I think it's almost from one extreme to the other. So I would suggest you go back and look at that. I don't know what the objective is to get or the catwalk or whatever on this view, or if it's just seemed like a cool thing to do. It does seem a little bit, forced for this particular, application. And again, I think because of that, I would have concern, not because we've never done one. They have
Well, it's,
history here.
I've always looked at, if you read Milner closely, if you believe in the whole premise, that's the only guidance we have, and you understand, we've already passed the point of no return in new design, and even HPF has acknowledged buildings have gotten much bigger, demand for ADUs, all these other things. So we are doing construction that is absolutely not in character with that neighborhood all day long, every application. Is it too late to say no? I don't know, but I will debate it until I'm off this board.
That's fair.
And so it's like, okay, and we all have our opinion. My vote will be no on the Widows Walk simply because I think it does not fit the character of Beaufort and the National Landmark District. And Antebellum on the Point that has a vintage Widows Walk. Yeah, but that's not compared to a period house this time that's, it just doesn't fit. It's not the same house, not the same scale. Not even the same location. I mean, if you're on a waterway, so that's my personal opinions on that. And of course I get one vote, but I am concerned about the elevation. I think they pushed the envelope as far as they can at the client's recommendation to get what they want. And I think it is the job of the board to push back when we see something we don't like. So that's where I stand.
My only comments were that, I did question the height because it wasn't on there, like Mike said. And the Widow's Walk does seem to be kind of an afterthought. It looks like it was just kind of, oh, can we get this, throw it up there. So I think if it were more hidden, not as like an afterthought, basically, rearranging it, it might be more appealing, but right now I don't think it fits. I think everything else looks fine. I do question though the height. And with the pitch, it's gonna look really. But it does fit the character of those homes, the newer homes there.
So I've asked the board to review the staff recommendations because it is conceptual and see how far we've gone outside that particular list and anything that we could be constructed to add to that list.
Right.
And in one comment, that I don't see anything about shutters in the staff report. Did I missing? I've read
I
it.
think
two
it
or
was
three-
in the HTC, wasn't it, in that?
Okay,
We support either shutters or no shutters.
okay.
Yeah. It's not gonna be all around anyway, so the alternatives were either shutters on the first floor, facing the street elevation on the two windows next to the front door, and then also around the sides, the first. If you look at your screen here, so this would be the option with shutters. It wouldn't include all windows on the east or west elevation. It's just the main, I think, the
Well,
first
the
third
applicant-
of the,
The
yeah. so-
applicant stated they were going to negate shutters anyways. I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
practical
So
reasons.
it's.
So that's really not in the staff report, but when it comes back to
Mhm.
final, that might change your mind. We'll see. We'll just have to address it then. And I agree with the complexity of how do you do a 3-bay window with shutters? It's kind of hard to do.
Yeah. It often looks very odd.
Mr. Chairman, that house there has a great example of it, but I'm sure it's expensive.
What's that? Oh, the 3-bay, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
Marshall has accordion shutters too.
It's really cool.
It's doable, but they stay in the open position and then when you need them, they're probably not that functional anyways, but if they're for aesthetics, it kind of makes no sense. Right? All right, we had a good run of conversation. We see staff notes. Anybody thinking anything further that related to conceptual?
Just to clarify, that has 2 or 3.
Yeah.
restaurants there.
It's a, I guess it'd be a proper term. You can ask a question because it is more of a,
This, when you're, have you been in this space by chance? I mean, but you're in this space, you can see out. This is not a roof deck.
it's a lit space.
It's
a-
just like, it's a clear story, or is it,
A beacon, yeah.
well, it's actually, yeah, big.
Have either of you been in? No.
No.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a cupola or if
Yeah.
it's acceptable, but
It looked more like a cupola to me, but it's hard to
But
tell.
this is quite different than what you're good, I don't think this is a good example of what you're trying to accomplish, because you're not in that space looking out. You have to go through that to get up onto the roof deck and this may or may not have a roof deck. Is that?
Yeah, you may not be able to get in this.
Yeah.
It might just be window lights into the building, but it does appear to be, I mean, we use that term widow walk.
Right.
You're
yeah.
really doing an observation deck. Is what that appears to be to me, and that's, I think that's some of my frustration with observation decks on top of roofs is not something historically we see. I think that's where I'm coming from. A cupola might be debatable, just like the old, what place down on Bay Street. They fought that battle for weeks and weeks in this meeting about whether they could do one when the old, what was the name of that place down there? The old, not whiskey, something. Lisa, help me here. What's the building on Bay Street that has the cupola on top of it that everybody fought forever and a day? The new building on the old. There used to be a hotel there. What's the name of it that got torn down? Golden Eagle? Remember it had a
oh, yeah.
it had a roof deck. It wasn't a widow's walk, they call it that, but it was actually just like this Oaks building. They had a tower on top. They lit up. And, I think back in the day, they used it as far as notices to navigation for mariners. That was a shipbuilding area. And I think maybe they would light that tower to help them find their way into their moorings. I'm assuming. It's not a historian in that realm, but it's not a deck with handrails. You can go up, sit up there and have cocktails. I think we beat that up way much. All right, looks, well, folks, it's conceptual, so we got a bite at the apple again and again before we get to final. Any further thoughts?
No, I'm good whenever you guys are.
I'm good with staff level approval, staff level comments on it. I don't know if we add anything else. I'd like them to study, keep looking at ways to lower the structure. I think as Kim stated, I think the character of the house, that's kind of the trend we're at now as far as, you said, you used the word, some kind of quaintness or
A cottagey.
cottagey. And it does feel, and that's a typical Allison Ramsey concept, you guys know I'm not a real fan of big houses with rafter tails, but again, that's their trademark. And if the owner wants them, I guess we're stuck with them, but it just doesn't seem practical, but it is an architectural form that was created right here in Beaufort, I think, the new generation. I think Cooter and probably you had something to do with that, right? We saw them on outbuildings. Now we see them on main houses.
Plead the fifth, plead the fifth.
All right.
I'm ready to make a motion, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'm, since Eric's not here, someone has to make motions, so unless these will.
Yeah, we
Well,
could
these-
beat this one up more, but I don't think we need to.
I was just gonna I can make a motion to approve with staff recommendations. And I would like to say, still maybe go back and look at lowering the height, the slope.
I have to say too, that I prefer the 12-12 over the 12-10, but.
Do you?
I think it looks better. Maybe, 30%.
Yeah, it did. So it looks like it didn't fly.
Uh-oh, more debate. Gotta get a second to have a debate. All right, sorry, I'm not
All
paying
right, so
attention.
somebody else will have to make a motion.
Did you make one?
Yeah, my motion was to go with staff recommendations, except to restudy the slope of the roof. And keep it at 10-10, which is what they did, instead of going back to the 12-12.
All right, and then we had if we get a second, do we get you can debate it. We can get a second and still talk about it.
Second.
All right, we have a second, it's on the table. Now's your chance to say, I disagree with you before we vote.
I mean, I don't disagree with, I think the height, I see that as being an issue for some people, but I think that the 12-12 pitch looks better in that building than 12-10.
So I think there's enough support, I think there's enough support here to carry the motion, and that's still a concern, so either way, because they don't have to come back with that, it's
Right.
it's a conceptual. So we have a motion on the table, we beat it up, any other questions about it? Then I'll call the question, we'll start here with Kim.
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you, sir. You want this extra stuff? You got what you need? You want another copy? All righty, where are we at now? Look like we're,
All right, we're staying on Duke Street, 1308 though. This is not a infill or anything like that. It's a simple addition to an existing dwelling. It's a 47 square feet bathroom addition to a contributing structure from originally 1910. It's on the National Register of the Historic Places.
cheers.
The historic inventory picture looks like this. If you look at the house, this is what it looks like, or this is what it used to look like when they took the inventory. It's zone T4HN, historic neighborhood. It's actually surrounded by a good deal of contributing historic homes all around. So if you look at the street view pictures here on the slides, this is the house, the white house with the metal roof. I kind of tried to get an angle that kind of shows also the side elevation sort of kind of, because that's, if you look at the next slide, basically where the addition will be placed. It's not going to be placed at the rear of the house, but they're going to kind of fill that corner in with just adding a bathroom there. So it should not be visible from the street location. If you go back and look at the street view here, it's well disguised actually behind that corner there. So it came to the HTRC also on October 29th. Our staff's comments were that overall we are supportive of this addition. The only thing that staff would like to maybe recommend would be to adjust that window that would be placed with the same size of windows that are already on that elevation. So the smaller window that they would like to put in here within that bathroom kind of depicts the windows that are currently on the rear of the dwelling, which are the small kitchen windows. The larger windows on that elevation, we would feel like it would be maybe more in keeping there. However, as I said before, you won't really see that window because it's kind of hidden behind that, kind of that side part of the house kind of sticks out. So walking down Duke Street, you wouldn't probably even tell what kind of size of window it would be. So with that, it's in keeping with the materials, with the workmanship on the existing contributing structure. It is in keeping, it preserves the existing structure integrity, the design. It meets with all the other integrity guidelines, rationales that I've presented before already. It doesn't negatively impact the feeling, nor the structure, or has any negative aesthetic implications for the immediate neighborhood as well. If we look at the Secretary of the Interior standards, it kind of meets 1, 2, 3, and 5. So one property shall be used for its historic purpose. The purpose of the dwelling is not being changed. The extra bathroom is visibly really not, I mean, you won't be able to tell actually that they're probably filling that space in with that extra. It really doesn't have any defining characteristic or implications, as I said before, or the environments. So the historic character is not being really, diminished. It's retained and preserved. So the property will not be negatively impacted as a physical record of its time, place, or use. And as I said before, the craftsmanship, the use of materials does reflect what's already there. So with that being said, our staff recommendation is to approve this small addition for a bathroom, which is basically a water closet, a shower, and one sink, basically, with that window. Our recommendations would be maybe that's up to you, of course, to maybe adjust the window size to what's already on that elevation, so to kind of make it a little bigger. Of course, to use wood frame window would be preferable to kind of reflect the historic character of the house, of course. The applicant also, what we're missing to provide more specifications on the window jamb, head, and sill details. That's something that has been missing on the plans that were submitted to us. And then additionally to also, of course, provide the cut sheets for the new window. The only other issue that we saw, if I go back to the pictures, you kind of see the foundation wall is exposed CMU. It's not even stuccoed or anything. That's a question mark. I mean, that's not an ideal solution, right? It is existing. So yeah, that's a big question mark. Should they cover it or not? I mean, if they should cover it, then they probably would have to cover all the foundation wall, right? The CMU there. I mean, that's something that you might want to take up, but that's the other question that we would have. It's the seam, so the foundation CMU is exposed. It's ideally it should be stuccoed or covered with something, right? So that's it.
Thank you very much for the staff input. Miss Good, it's your opportunity to come up and tell us what you're trying to do. I know it's been a long meeting, and that pew's probably pretty hard by now.
Basically, what we want to do is just provide bathroom space. My husband will be 80, I will be 70. We have a long walk to get to the other one. So that space would be for our bedroom. It's not to change the structure. God knows that's the one thing I don't want to do, because it has more history, personal history, than it is of dollar value to me. So basically, that's all we want. We want, Mike, I've seen you call in a lot of houses, and we've been through a lot of things together. So you basically know, I just want to make it feel better. I want the kids to come home and remember home. I don't want it to change, and we're definitely not going anywhere.
Thank you.
That's all we want. Thank you.
We may call you back up, ask questions. I do have a couple questions for you, but we'll wait and get public comment out of the way.
Okay.
All right, we've heard from the staff and the applicant. I'd like to hear from the public at this point. And Lisa, I think you're up. I don't see anybody else here raising their hand.
Hello, Lisa Sunderla, Historic Beaufort Foundation. And this one is, out of all the others, the simple one, right? That's it. I think that Jeremiah has done really a very skillful job in tucking the restroom back in behind the original footprint and the original structure. And the first question, if this were the very first addition to happen to that building, then, the concern would be, oh my gosh, don't touch or damage the original fabric of the building. But that building has already had an addition added to it, which was in the 1960s, and a pretty lengthy addition, that was put there sort of as a shotgun. But the original house and its original footprint stayed intact. And I think by tucking it back behind there, that they've done a good job with that. And I think it'll be a nice addition that won't be obtrusive at all, and really won't harm the structure. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sandra. Any other public comment? Assuming nobody's online. Okay, we're gonna shut down public comment and bring it up to the board. Staff has made some 4 recommendations.
I don't necessarily agree with the staff that the window needs to be larger. I mean, it's a restroom window. I think it's fine to be smaller, especially for such a small bathroom. So,
I would agree with your comment. I'll support that idea. Mr. Woods, what do you think about the window?
Right, it's sized appropriately for its use and scale,
What do
yeah.
you think? Any window?
Doesn't bother me at all.
All right, well, number one, we ain't worried about that. There was a comment about wood window while we're talking about windows, and I think that this particular addition and way it's designed and what's happened to the house over the history of its life, I think it's appropriate to have a more modern window in that location and not push an issue on putty glaze wood window that will rot out in short order. So I think that staff's recommending they bring a cut sheet. This is for final though, so they would need a cut sheet to get permit and to get your final letter. And Mrs. Good, that's the question. Come on back up for a minute. That's the way we get you. Or he can answer.
I think we're amenable to a different window type, and
okay.
I don't know that we need a cut sheet. I think this is maybe just a
You
little,
don't need a cut sheet. Okay.
I think we're probably.
All right. So if the architect works with you and gets the window you want, I think we're good with it.
Yeah, you can't
That what
see
we're
it.
saying?
Yeah, you can't see it from the road.
Okay.
I mean,
I just didn't want to go down the path of forcing a handmade wooden window that,
right.
okay, so anyway, that's that one. The number 2. What about number 3, guys? You guys see that one?
Can I say something about that?
Yes, sir.
I think we would probably match the existing trim details. It may be a little hard to see because they have storm shutters over most of them. But yeah, we'll provide a detail like we typically do.
Okay, Just match existing.
Huh?
Match existing.
Match existing, fine, yeah,
that's
okay.
right.
All right, and then the last part on that was the foundation. And it's a tricky one because, yes, Miller speaks clearly that exposed CMU is not appropriate, but this is a building that has it. It's had it many years, way back. I think if we were going to let them do CMU wall on that little bump out, it would be appropriate to skim it flat and just ignore the rest of the house. Because that is on the edge, you see a little bit of it, but that would actually kind of meet us halfway. So CMU would be appropriate, but not exposed. And it's a small area, so I think it's not that much difficulty to create a smooth finish on it rather than a pointed CMU. That's my thought. What do y'all think?
Yep.
I'm good with that.
So the answer to that, number 4, is just make it a smooth stucco finish. And I don't have any other issues with this project.
Move to approve as just stated.
Second.
We got a second and approval here. Yoo-hoo. All right,
You
call
mind-
the question.
Would you
Pardon me?
mind actually stating those things?
Oh.
Because they're a little bit different in this. Sorry.
I knew you were gonna make me do that. Jeez. Where are my notes here? What did we do? What were the comments?
So basically, we're okay with keeping
We
them.
basically Xed the first 2,
Yeah, so 1 and 2 non-applicable.
no, yeah, 1 and 2, and then I think he said he'd provide some
Number
detail.
3,
Number 4 is not applicable, and number 5, it was like a smooth stucco, I think.
I didn't see number 5.
Yeah, we didn't get a 5.
Oh, okay. 1, 2, 3. Oh, the 5th one on the,
There's another one somewhere.
It's really
Really number
oh,
4.
in the packet. I was going off of the screen.
Yeah, it's number 4.
Okay. So 1 and 2 non-applicable, 3 match existing, 4 add the parge or
hard
Skim
surface, skim coat.
over the CMU. That's my motion. And
And I second that.
All right, with a motion on the table, does staff get enough of that information? Okay. I'm gonna call the question then.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Ms. Good, you have your bathroom as designed 99.9% of it.
2 hours and 20 minutes later.
Well, you got a little ways to go yet to actually use it, but
You're a very patient lady.
Jeremiah's gonna knock that bathroom out, aren't you, Jeremiah?
all right. We got,
Okay, the next one, was added, luckily at the last minute, came a little after 4 on Monday and we're closed yesterday, so for Veterans Day. But this was a COA, basically extension, so, I handed to Mike if, pass it out. So, 2 years ago, Justice Square came in, it was approved by the HRB. And I think he noticed on Monday afternoon that, that approval was reaching its deadline. So the COAs are good for 2 years. It was approved on November 23rd. And so what you'd be looking at is approving a 1-year extension of the Justice Square. So this is a 38 unit, well, actually, I think 44 unit altogether, but kind of redevelopment project in the middle of the city there. That was approved 2 years ago, and that's, I think he has all the materials that he can send to you, and I apologize since this came at 4 on Monday.
Which one?
Just had time to make it legal.
Oh, okay.
And so I think you were on the board at the time. I'm not sure, were you on the board, Mr.
You're talking about the
Woods?
block, the full block? over
Yeah, the whole
Yeah.
blocks.
Yeah.
Okay, this is over by the old jail.
Oh, the old jail
Right.
project, okay.
don't get into.
And so essentially that approval, the COA has 2 years, and after 2 years, it can be renewed 5 times for a year at each time. But it has to be renewed by the board. And so they discovered that the deadline was November 23rd on 2023. So almost 2 years have passed, so it needs to be renewed by this board. Luckily, because he sent it at a little after 4, I was able to put it on the agenda, update the agenda online and put it up on the board downstairs. So we met the notice requirements, but I couldn't send you that information in time. But staff would support that renewal. And I understand this is basically they're getting state funding for this project, and there's been a lot of delays for that. But otherwise, there's no changes that they're recommending.
Okay, thank you. I think, I don't know if you have anything to add to that? You can.
Hopefully nothing to talk about, but yeah, appreciate staff getting it in and yeah.
Okay, we'll open it to public comment so we can close the door on this one. All right, so now it's open to public comment. HPF, anything to say about extending a program on the block? Come on up, tell us or ask us.
And I'm not sure which. The last time I had an opportunity to talk to Mr. Wheeler regarding the project, which was, he came before HTRC a few months ago. He said that they were reducing actually the number of units on the section between Harrington and Wilmington. And I just wondered because that may change the design perspective of it. So are they, reducing?
Yeah, I think we'll let the applicant answer your question on that.
Yeah, so it's not finalized, but for the East Block, that's what they were going to South Carolina Housing for. Of course, lots of requirements and rules. A lot of minimum size requirements required us to reduce the number of units. So even larger than, I would say, market rate is what South Carolina Housing was requiring. And so we lost a few units. We don't have their grant yet, so that's not for sure, but that's where it's at right now.
All right, so hold your thoughts, stay right there. Any other public comment on this object to extend the deadline? Anybody online? Nope, okay. So I want to bring it to the board so we can ask you some questions. So now we're going to bring it up to the board and now we can clarify. First of all, it is the jail site. I've heard the presentation that was given by public comment and by the applicant was that they're going to reduce the number based on some requirements. So the first question I have, does it change any of the architectural style of the stuff that was approved?
I would say no, and I would hope, when we do go for building permit on all these, staff would agree that these are minor tweaks. But of course, if we need to come back to the board, we will.
Okay, so Reason I bring that up is because this is a long time ago. There was debates. Some of the debates was too many units, especially on King Street side, I think. Now I'm hearing there may be some reduction. That might be a positive outcome for those who didn't agree. I supported the numbers. But I can't sit here and articulate that I would be able to fight saying, no, you have to have more. So if it goes to staff, my opinion, when you do a permit and there's significant changes, kind of address the staff. If they come to you for permit, hopefully you will be able to look at that closely and understand that enough changes were not made to require to come back to HRB.
Yeah, of course,
Okay.
of course. But
Good.
right now, nothing's been submitted. So, you know, we have what we approved and until it changes.
Well, last thing I want to see is a headline in newspapers, they built 3 times the things that we wanted and we didn't approve it. So I want it to be like, yeah, they diminished it, not increased it.
Yeah, I mean, typically if you diminish things, it's not, doesn't really, you know, it's usually accepted. That's usually when you increase things, that then you new meaning. But, you know, again, they haven't submitted anything, so there's no,
Okay, well, if y'all see something alarming in there, please make sure that we're aware of it. We don't want to get caught with a
See.
situation of we're saying we're extending it and then all of a sudden it's not what we extended. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. I get a motion to extend this project.
So moved.
So moved. We have a second. Call the question. Aye.
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 All right. Staff, you get the extension for the applicant, please, and I think that was not the last thing on the agenda. I don't believe. I think we have, it is for projects, but we have something related to staff creating a brochure to hand out and a survey form, and I think you were asking us to look at that, right?
yeah, so if you remember at, I guess, a previous meeting, it was discussed, we were trying to come up with a training session, which obviously, we didn't come up with one. So that's something we can consider for next year is, sounds like we have some, you know, some things with new development that we should maybe talk about. I think you wanted to talk about easements, and I think, HBF was kind of going to agree to do a session on that. So we can come up with a time if you maybe put that on the agenda for December, you know, if you're got some time in February or March or January to do a training session, we'll coordinate. But what came up, I think, especially from the vice chairman who's not here, was he wanted to talk about, you know, how do we make this process like, you know, a little more, I guess, visible, and how can we improve it? Questions of that regard. And so, you know, kind of just decided one thing we could do is come up with a brochure, or it doesn't have to be a brochure, it could be something else, but that could be sent out to all the residents in the historic district. Because I think, as you're aware, we've made a lot of major changes that I think were intended to help people and intended to make the process easier. And I think as you see from your packets today and the presentation, you know, those have dramatically improved, I think, in the last few years, right? You have a lot of information. The HTRC process, you know, they're getting a lot of information up front and through the process to make some major changes before they come here and spend time here. So we just wanted to make, and we're also doing a lot of things more of an administrative role, whereas, you know, before I think it was coming here. So, you know, I'd say the majority of things that come to us are being approved administratively. So we wanted to kind of pass on all of these changes to the residents, I think in some manner. If a brochure that's maybe mailed out is good, you know, that's what I came up with. But something of that sort that, hey, you know, look, we heard you, that we're trying to make this, you know, a less stressful and intimidating process for residents, and something that's a lot more, you know, that we're trying to work with them, not against them, you know, right? And that this is not so intimidating, right? And so that brochure is just, you know, maybe it's a little too wordy. I think, Mr. Sutton, you had some, you know, maybe we could cut down on it. But that's just a step in that regard. And then the customer service form is also kind of, you know, I think that was especially a recommendation from Mr. Berman. But you know, I don't think it's a bad one. You know, a lot of businesses and other governments, you know, government's usually not the best in customer service, right? But that doesn't mean we can't be better at customer service. I think that's all these changes were for customer service. So, you know, we could provide that for everybody that comes through and, you know, does a HRB or HTRC, just so we know what is the gap, right? What are we missing? What can we improve? That's kind of that form, so.
Okay, so you plan to hand this out to applicants, come to TRC or HTRC?
Or just submit an application, you know, just for a minor project, yeah.
And once you get that data back, staff gleans the data, how does the board know? I mean, I'd be interested in knowing not like one or two, but after you accumulate some wealth of information, you know, the real facts, what are the
Yeah,
answers?
sure.
You
I
know?
think that's the goal, is to bring it back and kind of, you know, show you where we stand and what can be improved for all of us, right?
Yeah, I mean, if they're saying we're miserable failure, right, then I'd like to know. So,
Well,
Mhm.
and that's what I was gonna say. In one of my former lives, I was a researcher. So I was used to writing surveys, and they're only as good as you use the information you get from them. So if we're not going to do anything with it, you're wasting everybody's time. But if you're actually going to study it and present it to us so that we can utilize the information, I think it's great. I would recommend that on question 5, how likely are you to recommend it? Not really an option.
It's true.
So you might want to rephrase that in some way, because I think what you're trying to get to, it's very valuable information. I think it's just maybe rewording,
Number
not
5.
recommend so much as how was the process for you kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a simple change we could make, sure. So, I mean, any other questions you have? I think the brochure was meant to be maybe mailed out. I know with the historic task force that was created, I should mention that. It's not going to be set until I think next year. The deadline is basically the end of this year, December 31st, but we're going out, passing out flyers to people in the neighborhood. And, you know, I think what I found was a lot of the residents had done the process like years before and they're still angry. And so, and maybe some people today are still angry, but, you know, I think it was just meant to provide, you know, hey, we made some changes. Maybe it's a little easier this time and more and less intimidating. So that was the goal for that brochure. But the goal for this is just to give you some information, us some information, and maybe in 3 months or 6 months or every quarter, we can bring it back some,
Well, I was
results.
that's what I was gonna recommend, Kurt. I think every quarter, if
Yeah.
you're getting enough information that's, you know, substantive, then I think every quarter you could debrief us on where
Yeah.
things are. And I think every year, we ought to have, you know, a planning session. How do you implement, you know, things that we deem necessary you know, the takeaways and what can
Well,
we do to improve?
yeah, I think they can glean stuff out on their level, HTRC, that we wouldn't opine on, but if there's stuff related to HRB, I think that's the stuff I really want to hear. Rather than staff making the changes without our input. You know, because we don't go to HTRC typically. That's the whole purpose of that, is not to elongate the process. So I'd like maybe you could report on HTRC's going great. Okay, here's the problem we've had. And here's what we've done to correct it. And here's what problems we're seeing in HRB. Mike Sutton talks too much. Okay, I get it. And that's fine. I can take those words and do something with them, but it's the point of, I got to know. Right?
Like,
I'd also like to say with the survey, less is more. Nobody likes to take surveys for the most part. So I would just make it simple and easy to get through. 'Cause they can be pretty painful.
So with a few little changes to the survey, I think that sounds good to go. We'll do it quarterly. Is everybody okay with the brochure? If there's things that you would like to change?
Hey, Busher's good.
I think it's good, but I do think that you can condense some of it, and maybe bullet points are always easier for people to read, and you do have some on this one column, but maybe you look at a couple.
I'm going to try to
other-
condense it and email it to all of you in the next week, and you guys. can-
Okay.
I assume that will be on the website as well.
No, it hasn't been sent out or anything. I just wanted to make sure that this was something you wanted to do.
Well, I mean, when it is, when you publish.
Yeah, we would put it on the
It already,
website.
yeah, okay.
All right.
Other than that, apologize for the permit issue there. We've had a few, but I think we have a good system now. I think clearly the mechanical is, you know, we've had some turnover in the permit tech, but I think we've had a really good system where anything in the historic district has gone to staff, but these mechanical things have been, I think, what has been falling through the cracks. So we're making sure that that won't happen anymore, so.
Yeah, and I guess before we quit, one question to be thinking about for the next training session is maybe report to us on how we doing on post-construction review of projects.
Yeah, so we're inspecting all of the projects, every single one now, so that's.
Yeah, I mean, because it's like, I'd like to see, sometime I drive down the road and go, man, that happened in my lifetime in the last year, and it doesn't look like I remember proving that.
Yeah, and I think that was just, before we had Christopher and Nicholas, it was just me, so I think I was kind of, and I was doing all the other boards too, so I think it was just a little much for me, but now we are doing all of those inspections, so.
So can we get updates?
Would you like a report every month
Yeah,
on
I
the?
would.
Okay, I mean, I think we can do that.
I mean, it can be short and sweet, but just, we did a drive-by, we did a whatever, this is what we've seen, this is the progress made. I mean, I do that too, but I don't have them all like in front of me when I'm driving down the road and.
Sure, I mean, we can add that and just think, we'll put on the agenda for December, but just think what days and times you'd want to do a training session in the beginning of the year, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you. I think we're waiting for a question.
Make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
Second, the motion, not debatable, adjourn.